What's up, guys? So this is the story on how I acquired arguably the most famous or viral Jeep on the internet. For those of you who don't know, behind me is my 2JZ swapped 2000 Jeep Cherokee XJ. So just to give you guys a little bit more info on this Jeep, if you don't already know, it's a 2JZ GE VVTi with the 6662 Turbonetics turbocharger. It's got a triple fan aluminum radiator setup. It's sitting on a 4.5-inch lift, sitting on some 33-inch tires. Believe it or not, I get a lot of hate for this Jeep. A lot of you may be familiar with the term bought not built. Well, I get probably the most hate in that category. I don't think I've ever made a video properly addressing or telling you guys how I went about building and acquiring this Jeep. So right off the bat, I would never take credit for another man's build or hard work. One thing I get a ton of comments on either Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok, YouTube, whatever it is, the number one comment is, how did you build this Jeep? I'd love to say that I acquired the engine, swapped it in this Jeep all by myself in my driveway, but that's not the case. And I'm here to address that, and I want to be really transparent with you guys. A lot of you already know the story with the Jeep. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll know the history with this Jeep and myself. So in order to lay everything out on the table, we have to go back about 6 years. There was a shop in Springfield, Massachusetts. There was a muffler shop local to me that had the idea, and he made everything happen. So when I first bought this Jeep, I posted it all over the internet, and I thought other people would want to see a unique build like this too. So I posted it all over Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and quickly grew a pretty big following over this Jeep. And a lot of people gave me flack because I didn't do the swap myself. A lot of people claim that I took credit for the swap. Well, that's false. I never took credit for this swap at all. Like I said, taking credit for another man's work is just pathetic. I would never do that. First things first, no, I didn't have the idea of swapping the 2JZ into the Jeep Cherokee. I bought the Jeep with the swap already done. That being said, there isn't a nut and bolt on this Jeep that I haven't touched. Everything has been redone. Matter of fact, the only original part on this Jeep from when I bought it is the turbo itself, which I'm sure eventually I'm going to end up replacing. When I bought this, not many people knew about it unless they were local to the area and knew about this guy's muffler shop in Springfield. He took it to a few shows, but he never really posted it online much. I think there was one video that went pretty viral back in 2016, him doing a burnout in this Jeep. The guy is awesome. The guy I bought this Jeep from was awesome. No hate towards him whatsoever. So going back 6 years, the year's 2019, right before COVID hit, basically everything was half as expensive as it is today. After COVID hit, prices were just up. So the year's 2019, I'm working at my job, I'm making some pretty good money, and I see the local muffler shop that I've been to before bringing my other Jeeps to get exhaust systems put on, posted this Jeep for sale. Never in a million years would I thought I would get the opportunity to buy it, but that happened. So I saved up a good amount of cash with the swap, the Jeep included. It came on a set of 35s. It seemed really cool, and I thought it was a Jeep that was completely dialed in, turnkey, ready to go. But let me tell you, that was the complete opposite of the case. Well, that first day that I got it, the old AW4 transmission decided to leave the chat. In the midst of all that, the Jeep actually caught on fire. I wish I had video of it to show you guys, but I don't. I think there's a vent on the transmission, starts spewing fluid because it's overpressurizing, overheating, whatever it is. And the Jeep actually ended up catching on fire. Luckily, thank God, was able to put the fire out. So I brought it to the shop, and the guy told me transmission smoked. So of course, the first thing I do is I reach out to the previous owner, the guy I just bought it from. He refers me to a guy who can put a new transmission in for me. So that's the first day, mind you. I ended up putting a new transmission in this. It actually was a used transmission with 140,000 miles on it. And I took it to this guy, brought it to his shop. He threw in a new transmission, test drove it. I went and picked it up, and everything was great. I was back on the road. So I remember that day driving home with the new transmission, and this thing was just completely different. It was like driving it for the first time all over again. So I get it home, and I decide to make a little video of it. And that's actually the first video, long form video on YouTube that I posted. Basically, it wasn't that long. It was just talking about this Jeep and talking about how I would just replace the transmission in it. Well, from there, it went to Instagram, TikTok, and I just started making videos about this thing and not really knowing where it would go, if it would go anywhere. But the traction that it made was incredible. Built a pretty good following on social media across all platforms relatively quick. And from the beginning, day one of making social media, the first comment someone asked about, how'd you swap this? What made you come up with this idea? I was very transparent, and I told everybody that I bought it swapped. As lame as that sounds at the time, I didn't know how much I would be putting into this Jeep. So yeah, I did buy it swapped, guys. I'm sorry to burst your bubble. There's not a bolt and nut on this to this day that I haven't touched. So after that first transmission was replaced, I was on the road, I was shooting videos with it, and I slowly started becoming more comfortable with this Jeep. As I'm getting comfortable driving this Jeep, I realize it's terrifying and it needs a lot of work. So one thing that I forgot to leave out is I actually gave my best friend the money to go buy this Jeep because I was working 12-hour shifts at the time, like 7 days in a row. And I didn't have time to even go buy this Jeep, and I knew it was going to be bought. And I still think that if I didn't buy this Jeep, I think someone else probably would have just ripped the 2J out of it and put it in something else, and this Jeep right here wouldn't even exist. And I'm still glad to this day that I bought it. One thing you don't do is give your buddy a stack of cash and tell him to go buy a vehicle for you, because although they may be knowledgeable, they don't look at the little things that you would look at. One thing being the unibody on this Jeep. I'm going to be straightforward with you guys. The unibody on this Jeep is very rough. The previous owner used this Jeep before he 2JZ swapped it. There was a boosted 4.0. He had a turboed 4.0 in it, and he did hill climbs. He brought this thing off-road. He had a lot of fun with this Jeep, and it shows. Now, mind you, right before I bought it, this whole Jeep was painted, and it was beautiful. Cherry gold flake paint. It looked incredible. Still does look really good. But after a couple of years, if you don't address rust properly, it starts to show and it starts to come through paint, bubbling up on the metal, and that's exactly what happened. But that's not the bad part. In the midst of replacing the transmission, the guy told me my unibody didn't look too well, and I went under and I saw my floor rotted out, and I saw the unibody had a lot of undercoat on it, but I still didn't really pay too much attention to it. So I think about 3 years into this point, I realized how much of a headache I actually bought when things just started breaking, little things, realizing that I'm gonna have to sink a lot more money into this than I originally thought. So I ended up taking off a lot of parts that the previous owner put on and basically reviving, giving it a little refresh, putting tasteful mods that I like. Because when you buy something, you know, it may be nice, but it's not what you like, and you wanna make the vehicle your own. The problem is on social media, things escalate so quick that yeah, the first couple thousand followers that I got, mind you, we're up to 100,000 now. I addressed the fact that I didn't build this Jeep from scratch. I didn't have the idea to put the 2JZ engine inside the Jeep. So I remember way back when I first got it, I was telling people about this. I was transparent. They were like, oh, that's cool. It's bought, not built, but whatever. And it started to snowball, and before I knew it, I was up to 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 followers, and I was still getting the same comments. People, for some reason, assumed that I took credit for this build, and I flexed it like I built it.
I love it. I love it. Like he fucking built it.
Which is completely false. If you go back to the first video, you can see that I actually do give credit to the original owner of this Jeep. I replaced my transmission once, and at that time I was starting to get comfortable with the Jeep, bringing it to shows, showing it off and whatnot. I realized that the Jeep had safeties installed in the ECU. This Jeep has a Mega Squirt 3 ECU. It's a standalone ECU, and that's what the 2JZ runs off of. As I got more comfortable with the Jeep, I started to push its limits a little bit more and realized that as I got on it more, the previous owner had installed safeties into the tune, which in my case was great. I didn't know anything about it at the time. Had he not installed those safeties and the tune wasn't right, I probably would have fried this engine already. So as I'm getting more comfortable with this Jeep, I decide that I want to get it tuned. The tune that was on the Jeep was was decent, but it was basically just a tune that you can drive on. You can't really push its limits. I think he actually set those safeties and retuned it before selling it to me because he didn't want me to blow it up, which I completely understand. I was already on him about the transmission blowing up, but there's nothing really he could have done about that. It was used and it was going to go out eventually. I decided to bring it out to a guy in Rhode Island to get a dyno tuned and see what we can do with this bad boy, really dial it in. On the way there, my transmission, the one that I replaced already that had 140,000 miles on it, decided to blow up again. When I say blow up, this time it wasn't as dramatic. There was no fire. I was driving and I remember downshifting because this Jeep is automatic. I have a little toggle switch that I can manually shift the gears. That's called a nifty shifter if you guys don't know. But I was taking it out of overdrive and putting it into third, and it just went into neutral. I was hitting the gas, it was in third, and it wasn't going anywhere. And I knew that wasn't good. I ended up blowing my transmission for the second time. Luckily for me, and I was about 15 minutes away from a transmission shop. I said, well, I don't really have many options. I might as well get it there and see what this guy can do for me. He ended up being a really cool guy, and it was a great shop. And he took the Jeep in and he said, you know, give me some time. I'll rebuild your transmission and we'll get it dialed in for you. It ended up taking a couple, I think it was about a month and a half. It was a long time. I mean, I did drive there and just drop it on the guy, so I wasn't expecting to get it back in a relatively quick manner. But the bad part is I never got it tuned. The good part is well, I never got it tuned because had I brought it to the tuner and he hooked it up on the dyno and we were doing runs, I would have made a complete mess of his dyno and it would have been a bad time. In hindsight, it was actually good that my transmission went out because that thing was knocking on heaven's door and it was only a matter of time before it went out. So I go and pick it up, and this is transmission number 3. I went and picked it up from the shop and everything is dialed in. It's a great transmission. That's the same transmission that's in it now. It was fully rebuilt. I paid way too much to have it rebuilt because I didn't care about what it took or what it cost. I just wanted the damn thing back running. Now I have a fresh transmission and I was still left with a crappy tune. So when I get this thing back from the trans shop, it was go time. I was finally able to push its limits and get this thing tuned. The problem is I spent all my money on the rebuild, so now I was completely broke. So now I'm trying to find a tuner, and I finally found a guy who's willing to help me. Shout out to you, Tyler, if you're watching this. You came in clutch that day. And he came up and he actually helped me change my starter on this. That's when we started tuning on this thing. He hopped in it. We went on some polls. He quickly realized that I have a few safeties installed on this. He removed those safeties, and after doing a few polls, he told me, cut it, you're running out of fuel. I was like, what do you mean I'm running out of fuel? What does that mean? You need a new fuel pump. And like I stated earlier, I had no idea what kind of fuel pump was in this thing. I decided to just go all out. Got a new fuel pump, an A1000. It was very pricey, but it was an investment, and still to this day I'm so happy that I went with that brand because now I have all the fuel that I want. Before we started tuning, Tyler asked me, what do you have for AFRs, air fuel ratio? And I'm like, well, I don't know. I don't have a gauge. Stupid me at the time didn't know that having a turbocharged vehicle, it's very important that you know what your air to fuel ratio is. If you don't, then you can cause serious damage to your engine. If you lean it out, you're at risk of melting a piston because of extreme heat. If you have it too rich, then it can affect your performance and gas mileage. Overall, it needs to be dialed in. And in order to do that, you got to know what you're doing. So we're doing some polls, and Tyler told me, you're actually leaning out, and this is as far as we can go for today, because you need a fuel pump. So I go and buy this badass Aeromotive A1000 fuel pump with the fuel cell, and it wasn't cheap. It was pretty expensive for my taste. And this is the problem with bringing it to shops. As I learned, if you want something done right, you got to do it yourself. Not necessarily right, but in a timely manner, and save yourself a lot of money. Because if you're like me, I don't have a lot of money to just be throwing at shops. And it turned into this whole thing where, to be honest with you, I was just throwing down credit cards, which was cool. It worked, but credit card debt's bad. If you guys are watching this, I advise you not to use credit cards. Save up your cash and only purchase what you can afford. So now that I have the fuel pump and the fuel cell, everything I need to get this thing dialed in and running great, I believe it was the winter of 2023 or 24, I had to figure out how to get this thing in. And winter in New England sucks. I don't have a garage, so I couldn't do all the work outside. Well, I could, but it was extremely cold. I didn't feel like doing that. So what I did is I brought it to a shop, and it ended up taking way too long to get it installed. And again, the shop that I brought it to does amazing work. They do quality work. When I got it back, it was great. But in the midst of all that, I was kind of losing money because I was making money off of this on YouTube and Instagram and TikTok. The most important thing with YouTube is you got to be consistent. You got to upload a lot to keep yourself in the algorithm so people watch your videos and you can keep growing. That was the whole plan. Well, it took a lot longer than I thought it would, and this is another example of doing things yourself is always the best way. You learn something, you save money, and you end up getting it done quicker. So this shop took a little bit longer than I anticipated, and it ended up turning into kind of a nightmare because the pump that was shipped to me, my luck, was defective out of the box. It was sucking air and it sounded terrible. Mind you, an A1000 air-motive fuel pump is pretty noisy, but this one was surging and it wasn't making enough fuel pressure. So I knew something was up, and the guy I brought it to install it recommended I reach out to Airmotive, which I did, and they sent me a brand new pump. The shop installed the pump and everything was great. And then we reach our next hurdle. My tuner moved, and now we're getting into what's called remote tuning, which basically is running a log and sending that log to the tuner. The tuner then opens it up on his laptop, does his adjustments, sends you back a new file. You load that into your ECU, and now you got a new tune. So that kind of forced me to learn a lot about tuning. After I finally figure out how to connect the ECU to the laptop, and I can finally see what's going on in Tuner Studio, Tyler sends me a new tune, adjusting the AFRs. Now I'm getting into the nitty-gritty of it. Okay, it doesn't really sound right when it's idling. Let's change that. It's all done through Tuner Studio, adjusting your VE tables, and basically getting that AFR on point, and that's what I wanted. That's exactly what happened. After we got the tune dialed in, I was finally able to floor this thing and not hit any boost cuts, and at the same time, that kind of showed me how really dangerous and sketchy this really is. I thought it was sketchy this whole time until I started to get into tuning and increasing the power of this old shit box. So over the next year, that's basically what I was doing, and still to this point, I'm working on is tuning. So tuning for me wasn't going to a dyno. In fact, this thing has never been on a dyno. Everything tuning-wise has been done on the street, which is, again, very sketchy because not only do you have to exceed the speed limit, you know, you got to drive in a little crazier than you probably should on public roads. And I'm not looking to put anyone's life at risk. I don't want to lose my life in this Jeep. I think the next step is going to be dyno tuning it, and that brings us to where we are today. I'm still working on tuning, and that whole fuel system has been replaced. So now that I have a brand new fuel system in this thing, the sky's the limit. Tuning is basically everything that I need to do at this point. I'm over the whole street tuning thing, and I'm ready to save up some money and get this thing on the dyno so I can really start pushing its limits. The way tuning works is you need to be wide open throttle, and you need to get a couple wide open throttle pulls to really see what's going on and to dial in your tune. Little things like brakes, suspension components, the transmission cooler, fittings in between the cooler, valve covers I've replaced. I did the headliner on it. This engine has actually been out one time since I've owned it. The transmission has been out 3 times since I've owned it. So yes, you could say that this Jeep is bought, not built, but it doesn't really feel like that for me because although I bought someone else's project, I've basically taken everything off of the Jeep and redone everything to my liking. And at that point, you could argue that this is my build now. I will never ever take credit for the original idea of swapping a 2JZ into a Jeep Cherokee. But the simple fact is this Jeep wouldn't be where it is today if I didn't buy it and keep it going. I genuinely believe that someone would have taken the 2JZ out of this and put it in something else. I may be wrong. I also don't think anyone would be as stupid as me to sink so much money into an old Jeep like this that's still rotted out, by the way. I think a lot of people probably would have given up, but what kept me going at the end of the day was you guys watching all of my videos and seeing how many people are genuinely interested on a 2JZ swap Jeep Cherokee. Seeing how many people are genuinely interested in the build really makes me happy. So that's drive to keep me going and to make this thing as badass as possible. We're not even at the point to where this thing is even almost finished. So where it sits at today, this Jeep is pretty dialed in. The tuning is great. It's a rocket ship. I think the next step is to get this thing on a dyno and we can push its limits. We can run multiple pulls without putting my life and other people's life on the road at risk. And I can finally start making the content that I want to make for you guys. It literally is the most viral Jeep Cherokee on the internet right now. And I'm pretty proud of that. Although I didn't put the 2JZ in the Jeep, this is my build and I will continue to build on this platform as much as I can. So that's the story time with the 2JZ swap Jeep Cherokee. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Drop a comment down below and let me know what you want to see in future videos. And yeah, I appreciate everybody for watching. If you haven't already, subscribe if you want to, drop a like, and we'll catch you guys on the next video.